Hello and welcome to Upload,
a podcast by those who upload for those who want to.
or who already do.
And anyone else for that matter.
My name is Lionheart and I've been creating content for over a decade.
And my name's Midgeman and I've been trying to create content for almost a decade.
Together with some of our friends and fellow content creators, we're going to be exploring the great big world of content creation.
We'll be looking into the serious topics that face content creators today.
Because if someone said that to me like in person, or said that kind of stuff to me, you know, IRL, I wouldn't take it. So why would I take it like online? Why would I hide aspects of sort of my identity?
As well as some less serious topics.
I've been blindsided by the fact that one of your old live streams is called Suck My Missile for like the last
Sorry,
10
what?
minutes.
So sit back, relax, and enjoy another episode of Upload.
Hello and welcome to Upload, the content creation podcast from those who upload, for those who want to, and anyone in between. My name is Midgeman.
And I'm Lionheart.
And today, before we get into this episode, we need to remind you to turn on your auto downloaders, like us, subscribe us, follow us, rate us. Anything you can do to help grow this podcast and show your support would be most welcome. And if you want to get in touch with the podcast, if you have any questions, if you have setups that you want us to review, anything of the sort, you can do so either in our YouTube comments or hello@uploadpodcast.co.uk. Now, this week features a very special guest. She's part porcelain, part demon. She's on a mission to form a strategy VTuber army. She's also been cloned into a sock. Please welcome the wonderful Lady Saffron. Welcome to the show.
Hi.
So I think we need to start off today before anything else is, in the simplest terms, what is a VTuber? Because this is, I think, a new genre for a lot of people. It's a very new genre for me and Lionheart. We started before people really used cameras. But yeah,
You're taking that to a whole other extreme.
Exactly. This is new technology. And if nothing has been proven by this podcast is we like technology. So yeah, just explain what VTubing is.
Well, it's not really one thing, I'd say. It's more like a couple of different things that have kind of grouped together and sort of have some overlaps and some similarities. So I'd say one of the big overarching cultural points is anime. There's a very strong anime influence, as you can clearly see from my model, and I'm sure you've seen a lot of the other VTubers, the other big ones. They all have a very anime-inspired model. That's not to say that every VTuber is anime-inspired. There are a lot of really cool ones that have like a 50s vintage feel, or are not even people at all, or are like completely other things. But there's generally like an anime undercurrent through it all. And secondly, there are a bunch of different, like on the technical side, there are a bunch of different things that make a VTuber, ranging from 3D, which is what a lot of the big companies will do with like these fancy 3D concerts, to what I have, which is live 2D, which is a animation technique that is basically like a Snapchat filter or a face rig kind of thing, but a bit more specialized. All the way to PNG tubers, which is basically a reactive PNG that jumps up and down or does something else whenever you talk. It's basically a big range of technical things that all kind of fall together under one big category.
Yeah, it's just, okay, my brain just stopped working. I had a follow-up sentence. I mean, yeah, thanks for the exploration. For me, VTubing is one of those things of, I think initially when I saw the like genre, so to speak, actually pop up, as someone who wasn't, I hate to say it, I'm not a fan of anime, unlike like everybody I know. Mainly because
kill the podcast now, we're done.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like
I can't work under these conditions.
But it's one of those things of, I think I was quite initially dismissive, but like just looking at it even on a tech level now, and also just I think on an anonymity level, it's really interesting, and also what people are doing with it. Another thing before we move directly onto just more onto your journey and stuff, if you could possibly explain these a little bit. There's, like you said, there's these groups of VTubers. There's more like networks, and I don't know that I've forgotten what the technical term is, but like, for example,
Agencies.
The agencies, that's right. And you're listed as an independent VTuber, and there's a big, like, you really have to like classify that in the VTuber space.
This is honestly blowing my mind. I didn't realize it was so expensive.
I know, right?
Like,
it's
I've been
huge.
aware of like VTubers and And
It really
like,
is.
I know people like being face rigging and stuff like that, but I just assumed that, you know, it's just kind of almost like, oh yeah, instead of me just loading up OBS and like these being my filters, you have like a few extra bits in there, obviously, that are working with the face rig or whatever assets that you're using for it. Like, my mind is quite literally.
Yeah, this is the main reason I wanted like that, and I've working with Saf in the past. You're a wonderful person. I wanted you on that for anyway, but also Saf's knowledge of the VTuber space is like something that I don't understand. I know that, no offense, Lion, I knew you didn't understand.
No, I knew
explain
like
agencies
of
then.
it, but
Yeah,
not
please
like
do.
like I didn't realize the agency. Like,
Yeah, so go
So
ahead.
yeah, if you remember back in like the old Wild West days of YouTube, there were, you know, agencies of sorts, talent agencies, management agencies, multi-channel networks, that sort of thing. VTuber agencies are kind of like that, but they have a bit more of a cohesive culture, I would say. A lot of agencies are sort of derived from Japanese idol culture. The two of the biggest are Hololive and Niji Sanji. Both are based in Japan. Both have a sort of strong Japanese branch and have more recently branched out into non-Japanese VTubers. But it's sort of like a idol group with an online element where they're VTubers instead of real people. And meanwhile, there are other agencies. There are a lot of Western agencies as well now that are popping up. The biggest one is VShojo. They're much more akin to sort of traditional talent management agency, that kind of thing. They have a much smaller degree of creative control over their talents, and their talents can basically do a lot more of whatever they want. But they still do provide a lot of resources and support. And one of the things I learned recently that they provide is free therapy. They cover that because that's, yeah.
I mean, with the way that online culture is, offering therapy is like, that's a great move for a.
Yeah, it really is. And then those are the big three agencies, but there are a bunch of other smaller agencies. I think some of the more notable ones these days are Idol. There's Phase Connect. I have a couple of friends in Phase. Yeah, there are a bunch of others. A lot have recently disbanded or sort of let all their talents go free. I forget if it was Prism. I think it might have been Prism, but they recently disbanded, and all of their talents became just independent actors. And then that's pretty standard for it. There have been a lot of agencies over the years that have either fallen apart in horrible fashion or, in the good cases, peacefully dissolved and allowed their talents to go on with their lives.
why do you need them? Why do you need an agency, or why are they so, I guess, integrated in the kind of setup of being a VTuber or something like that? Just because I know that from like our side, obviously the demise of like MCNs is probably something that most YouTubers that have been going for probably 8 to 10 years are familiar in some form or another. And ultimately it kind of proved that there was no real value added from them, maybe for their top 1% of creators perhaps that they did unique deals with or something like that. I mean, you've already mentioned that they provide therapy and like obviously sounds like far better support, and actually it sounds like they're far more focused on creatives being there for other creatives. Just wondering what do they provide and what is their, why do you need them as such right now in the current ecosystem of it all?
That's a reasonable question. I would say for VTubing in particular, given the sort of particular cultural and technical demands on VTubers, it's kind of difficult to do that just on your own. The biggest expense, I would say, of most VTubers is the model. The models can be incredibly expensive. On the cheaper end, they can be around $200 to $500. Whereas on the more expensive end, there are models that are like tens of thousands of dollars. So there are massive upfront expenses in that regard. And on top of that, of course, you have all the usual streaming stuff that you need. You need, your mic, your setup, all that. But you also need, for example, an iPhone 10 or above, because iPhones have the best tracking on the market. So if you don't have one, or you have an outdated iPhone, or you don't want to use your personal phone for VTubing, you need a new phone, basically.
So agencies provide all of that, or
Yeah,
okay,
they cover that. They cover that entirely. They cover all the upfront. And sort of in exchange, you give them a cut of your earnings. It's all very secretive. A lot of contracts have leaked recently, and there's been a bunch of discourse about that, and it's been very controversial.
About offering fair rates and stuff. I mean, it's very similar to 2013, 2014 stuff with MCNs. There was kind of a shake up then. A lot of MCNs that survived that initial round tried to survive by offering better revenue share.
It's a lot of that. It's a lot of echoes of earlier YouTube, especially with the breakup of a lot of big ones. But the other thing that they offer is sort of commercial support, stuff like funding music videos. Those are a big money sink, but are really cool, and a lot of VTubers really like to do them. Merchandising, that's really expensive as an independent VTuber, but if you have the infrastructure already in place, it's super easy. Concerts, there's actually a really big one coming up later this summer by one of the big agencies, HoloLive, and it's in New York City for the first time basically ever. They've got a whole bunch of stuff that they can offer VTubers that you really just can't get on your own. I could never do a concert, for example, beyond my awful singing abilities, just because I could never get a big theater to let me have a concert there.
So it's almost like these agencies definitely, I mean, I think they're kind of instantly the main difference between kind of thinking about MCNs and stuff like that, or having like a talent manager typically as a kind of like a standard YouTuber or content creator. It's almost, I would say, this seems like more akin to what an agent does for like an actor.
I was about to say, my actor brain.
I mean, it
was
sounds
like,
actually in some respects like better than what agents do for actors, but it sounds far more like it's that type of relationship and ecosystem than MCMs, which I think is pretty much the very broad sort of network stroke of the brush that people understand that have been within this space, but not within the VTuber space. I mean, to be honest, actually kind of coming from sort of having worked with like traditional agencies, because the other time when I think of agencies as in agencies that work alongside brands or game developers or something like that. And they do that. And that's not really a particularly great experience most of the time anyway. There are some good agencies out there that are a delight to work with, but a lot of the kind of like old guard of them are very just like maximize profit, screw over your creators and bring in as much money to the company, the agency, as possible. But this sounds like a far more receptive ecosystem and actually wanting to ideally support your creators in the best possible way.
And that's the pitch, right? That's the thing. That's the pitch.
I mean, honestly, I was surprised at how much they're saying like that. They'll, all the upfront costs and the funding of the hardware or supplying of that, or the, getting all that set up. That's huge, to be honest.
But the thing is, of course, there are drawbacks. There are very big drawbacks.
Of course, yeah.
In recent years, there have been a bunch of very high profile scandals with regards to a lot of the big companies. Niji Sanji, for one, has had a bunch of very big troubles recently with the termination or graduation is the sort of when it's done on amicable terms of big talents. In fact, even my favorite VTuber recently graduated from Niji Sanji. So there have been a lot of big profile stuff like that. There have been revelations over very, very minuscule merch rates, over horrible mental health conditions, and just generally mistreatment within the industry. So it does come with a cost, a definite cost. And the other thing is Japan does not have fair use laws. They just don't. So because of that, if you want to do anything, you need perms, even if you're not in Japan, even if you're like an American VTuber, if you work for a Japanese company. So because of that, like tons of songs, tons of games are just completely out of reach because they would need to approach a company and ask for permission. And of course, the company is not going to give it away for free, given that these are billion-dollar companies.
Interesting. So, for example, because Paradox is I'm saying Paradox because you play Paradox games, I play Paradox games. I am slightly affiliated with Paradox Interactive. However, what I say that is I do not speak for the company in any way. I always have to caveat that. So if they wanted to play Paradox games, they would have to go to Paradox to ask for permission.
Mm-hmm. They would have to go to Paradox for one. And then they would also have to go to their management and say, hey, can I play these games? Because there's a decent chance that the brand would be like, actually, this game is too political, or this game is, might make our sponsors angry, or that kind of thing. And so there are many places along the chain where you have to ask for permission if you're in a company that I, as an independent creator, just don't have to ask permission to anybody. I can, I have fair use, so I can play Paradox games, and I'm not beholden to any manager, so I can just play them whenever I want.
That's the American spirit right there.
And that's the other thing, is you can do it independently. Like, I made my own model. I'm currently working on a new model. I've sort of done that on my own.
That's something I want to get into. Obviously you're doing this independently, but also you had to create yourself. Like, what initially inspired you to become a VTuber? Like, how did you come up with the persona of Lady Saffron?
So I've been watching YouTubers for a very, very long time, since like the Sky Does Minecraft days. And I've always had a bit of a fascination with it. It's always been really cool. I've always had an interest with it. When I was really, really younger, like 5th grade, me and some friends tried to start a Minecraft team. But
I did some Race for Wall back in school. I think I'm slightly older, so it's probably slightly older YouTubers that were my grow up. But I feel that. So it's just YouTube always interested you, and then where did the VTuber bit come in?
The VTuber bit came in. I was out of school in when was it? I think it was 2022. I was on medical leave from school, and so I just had tons of free time on my hands, and I just didn't really have anything else to do. So I started watching stuff, and I kind of randomly came across VTubers, and it just turned out to be a really good way to spend a bunch of free time. And then I decided, you know what, this stuff looks really cool. I want to try and make a model. It wasn't even that I wanted to be a VTuber at that point. It was just sort of, I'm curious about the tech. I want to make a model, and then we'll see where it goes from there.
And now you're trapped for life.
And now I'm trapped for life. But then once I got sort of back to school, I had my own space again. I had a bit more freedom. I was just like, yeah, I might as well try it out, see if it works. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. And if it does, well, I came to, this place.
There's a lot of unique terms with VTubing, and one of the things that we're probably going to talk about now is debuting. So you had your debut then, right?
Yes.
That's like your first reveal as a persona. Like, how much work went into the first time? Like, was it for you? Was it just something, I've made the model, let's just go? Or how much like planning? Again, Lady Saffron is as much as it is you and it is your online persona, it is also a crafted creation.
No, exactly. Besides the model, because the model's sort of the biggest thing. And I wasn't even using this model at the time. I had a older model.
No, this is V2, right?
Yeah, this is V2. Internally, this is V4 because I've gone through a bunch of internal revisions. But this is the sort of second public model that I've used. Beyond that, I made all my own assets. So like the background behind me, I made that. I got all of like my very tiny, awful mic. It was like a $60 Yeti Nano or something. I got like the programs all set up. It was a decent bit of work. And then as for the character crafting, I did spend a lot of time sort of coming up with Lady Saffron as a character. I tried to, for the VTubers are very big on lore. That's a thing that they're very weird and big on.
I was shocked to find you have a wiki page. I was like, why do I don't have a wiki page?
I do. I have a VTuber wiki page. But so my lore is basically that it's the situation I was in, which is American healthcare system kind of sucks. So the idea is like I summoned a demon and then had the demon do the healthcare for me instead of the American healthcare system. And in that, I very much borrowed from my own personal experiences with the healthcare system. So there's this big element of me in it. But a lot of it is also cultural aspects. For example, I went with a golem as sort of my template fantasy race. And the reason I went with that is because I'm Jewish, and I thought it would be interesting to sort of take something that's often, I guess, a bit perverted and distorted by popular culture, and, you know, like iron golems, for example, in Minecraft, or that kind of thing, and sort of try and put my own spin on it as
so
a
cool.
community insider and as somebody that has a more direct connection to it. As for a lot of the design elements, it was a lot of, I thought it was cool. And a lot of, I was trying to not look like a Homestuck character. Originally, I had 2 yellow eyes, and everybody I showed my character to was like, is that Homestuck? Is that Homestuck? And I was like, okay, this is not working.
So the heterochromia is to make sure that you stand out. I love that. That's fantastic.
And it was originally the other way around, but then people were like, is that Sans? Sans Undertale? And I was like, okay.
Cool. I mean, it's really lovely to hear that so much personality goes into not only getting it ready, but also influence from your background. You can still have that personal touch. This is one of the things that today, if I started content creation again now, I don't know if I would use me as the brand. I don't know if I would go out as Midgeman, as Alex, as a named human being, like in this day and age. But back in the day, for me, it was just I went live and I started, and
that's what you did.
And that's what we did. And it's a high school nickname and my name, and that's how people refer to me. People know that it's me. It's linked to my IMDb as an actor. Like, it's like one of those things of, it's too intertwined. I don't think I could become faceless again. I mean, I could go back to just using my voice, but it would always be my name and my association now. But I love that even in Anonymity, you've got that personalization, and all of the choices have kind of meant something to you. Outside of, trying not to look like some other medium with the eye thing. I actually, before actually going onto your wiki, didn't realize your character was a golem, because my background, I'm a huge D&D nerd. My head saw horns and went, oh, it's an anime tiefling.
That was one of the inspirations as well.
Okay, I'm not wrong.
No, don't worry.
Okay, I'm not wrong. It's fine. One of the things that I love about your stream, and one of the ways that I've noticed you engage with your audience, is with your schedule and your Twitch schedule, you put out, there's copies of fan art and stuff. So you have a highly engaged audience. What's it been like creating an audience around yourself? Like, what is your community like? And also, what strategies are kind of, if someone came in today and they were looking for I really like the community that Lady Saffron has garnered around her. Did you have a set plan and set choices that you made, or is this just stuff that you've happened and rolled with? Well,
honestly, yeah, I'd say it's more of I rolled with it. I didn't really have a whole lot of experience with community building. I've been on Discord servers before, but a lot of it was just sort of, it happened to me. It didn't really, happen because I was planning it or anything like that. I didn't even make my own Discord server at first. I sort of just let somebody make a fan server, and then I joined it, and that's actually still how it is. It's not even my server still, but I'd say one of the big important things is you need to enforce rules. If you do not enforce rules, you will be dragged around by your community, and you'll end up in a place that you do not like. And so because of that, I have some very strict rules in my chat. For example, on my non-strategy games, I don't allow backseating. I don't allow spoilers, that kind of thing. I've been playing Elden Ring recently, and I do not want people to spoil that for me because I've never played it. I don't want backseating. I want to sort of figure it out on my own. I'm also very strict on sort of bigotry and people being rude in my chat. It's taken a lot to sort of learn that I can just ban people when they're not nice, but that's another important thing, is it's just, if somebody's being rude, you don't have to interact with them. And on the internet in general, you can just, turn it off. But when you are the sort of entertainment, you have to regulate that and set the rules and make sure that people do not stick around if you do not want to interact with them. And then other than that, I would say a big part of VTuber fandoms in general is a more parasocial element. It's an intentionally fostered thing in that people get to know me as a persona. And there have been, times in the past where I've been incredibly uncomfortable because people have sort of thought that they are more friends with me than they actually are. So it's sort of important to regulate that, because on the one hand, it can be incredibly fulfilling and it makes a lot of money. It's incredibly lucrative to have people that, come back every month for your memberships or super chat you or that kind of thing. And it's incredibly nice to be able to, I recently, my computer died and I needed to buy a completely new one. And it was incredibly nice to be able to call upon my community and say, hey, I need help. And for them to basically fund the new computer almost entirely. It's rewarding in that way. However, it can get uncomfortable very quickly when people assume that they know you better than they do. And when people sort of treat you like you are your character and not a whole other person that's just sort of behind the character. It'd be like if you went up to Robert Downey Jr. and you treated him like Iron Man. Like, sure, it might be funny at first, but at a certain point, if you're like, show me where the fancy reactor is, it's like, okay, come on, man, stop it.
Yeah, it's being able to like separate the kind of creator from what they've created and also them as a person as well. And also the fact that obviously most creators are going to want to invest a fair amount of time into their community. They're not necessarily, they're not being false about, just being nice people and nurturing a nice following in a community as well. But it's kind of people learning those boundaries. I mean, I think that's just a wider thing of just being online, right? And people often going much further online than they would do in real life, face to face with someone. The boundaries for some people are blurred, but that's not a creator problem. That's just people not knowing their own boundaries and pushing things too far online and having that expectation or too much of an expectation online for the sake of it being online versus how they would act in person with someone.
The face-to-face aspect of it is actually very important as well, because as a VTuber, people don't know what I look like. I'd like to keep it that way. So because of that, when I go to like conventions and that sort of thing, I'm kind of incognito. But in another way, I'm not. I can't be. If I meet up with friends, I introduce myself as Saffron because that's how I want them to know me. But if I say that too loud, then people may be, oh, hey, are you Lady Saffron? Are you Lady Saffron? Are you a normal person that is Lady Saffron? And I don't want that. So can be weird. A lot of the bigger VTubers have these iPads on sticks on Roombas that like roll around conventions so that they can kind of go around but without being like seen. But
wow,
really,
like full like
yeah,
Big Bang Theory style.
If I see one at TwitchCon this weekend, I will take a photo.
They're so cool. I saw a bunch of them when I went to a convention recently. But the big way that you don't like interact with fans when you don't have the camera on, so to speak, is just by pretending you're a normal person, which can be difficult in person.
I guess because you've got that separation compared to, say, like myself or Midgeman, where people instantly see it's kind of hard to miss. Whereas to say like you've got that ability to I guess separate a bit if you want to. Obviously, some VTubers might be like, no, that's fine. This is me in real life, and obviously I have the VTuber version that I put on when I'm online. I guess, yeah, in a way it's probably like a double-edged sword, because you have that ability to be able to fully, to a degree, switch off and be like, right, I'm just me. I can actually just enjoy this as me because nobody knows what I look like. I can do what I want, but also then you say you've got to balance that between if you are meeting up with friends, and because elements, I would say as well as a creator, I try to be as real as possible with me being me, mainly because I can't be. I don't have the energy to be kind of almost two people of like a creator version of me.
It's exhausting.
And then just me. I know that there are elements that are heightened when I'm live or something like that, but largely it's still me. But if you don't have that, if you can't like switch that off, that's very difficult to try and balance.
Obviously, there's cases that I can think of to hand of people in their mortal flesh who are content creators, who have gone from being very anonymous to unfortunately not. And there's always going to be a point, I think, unfortunately, with online creation. It's a good thing to like talk about, because honestly, I think if you're a VTuber, you could probably go longer being anonymous. It's probably one of the perks. But for example, Spiff is very protective of his identity. For years, people had no idea what he looked like. And then essentially he hit that threshold of popularity and also started going to, conventions. People started recognizing his voice, that he kind of had to give up on that. But he's still managed to retain quite a lot of his private.
He still keeps very, this is what I look like, this is who I am, but that's it. Like, you don't get to know anything. If you do get to learn something new, it's carefully controlled and released through official, but it's not like you'll be like, oh, here's a leaked bit of Spiff info.
For me, it's like on a working with Paradox front, like at the 2022 PDXCon, he was there, and it was like one of those things of, I could tag him, I could take a photo of him, but I wasn't allowed to take a video of him for the brand account. And he's just protective, and it's good. I'm not saying that this is a bad thing.
I think the first time I met up with him, we both did a collaborative thing up at Overclockers in the UK, and we did a stream in the evening. And I think they had a camera on it, and I don't know why we didn't just unplug the camera or just not show his, but we put a paper bag over his head with eye holes.
There was a couple of those for a while. So like one of the early Yogscast
I think it was where we
ones,
leaned fully into it, and we were like, "Oh, we'll do a Spiff face reveal," and it was just him with a bag, like a paper bag over his head with like some eye holes in it. And I think then we replaced it with his logo. Essentially, it's an interesting look at how there's different ways for creators to present themselves, and either you can do that more, you can still build up you can still build up the Lionheart brand or whatever, and that. But as I said, like, I don't try and really have a Lionheart persona. It's just me, maybe just slightly dialed up a little bit.
Yeah, we all do that.
Whereas you can create the full, thanks to having that kind of that virtual presence as well. You can tailor that however much or as little as you want. Like, it can either be you in just virtual form, or it could be a full kind of escapist way of presenting in a completely different way, or being a different person, or however you want to be. But then there's kind of almost like so as much customization with that as much as you want to give it or not. But I think it's a very interesting way of looking at the different ways in which almost you develop different levels of brand identity, or the need to develop different levels of brand identity within that, and the kind of the marketing that goes into it. And probably all just feeds back to you talking about how probably for VTubers how important agencies are, because it is, I think, as you say, it's probably more accustomed to actors, right? Because especially how you have like an actor's name, and then behind that there'll actually be their real name that they barely ever talk about. That's them in their most vulnerable, that's them in their most real moment. And then they come out on stage as their actor or their on show entertainer version of this. I think that's probably the much closer parallel. I think you're far closer to that than you are a typical like content creator as such. It's really interesting to see how we've got all these different types of creator now, but also just it's still seriously blowing my mind how much of like a network and how much of an industry there is behind VTubers. Not just there's agencies and there's kind of talent management and stuff like that, but you're saying like they're putting on huge shows globally and everything else. I can't get my head around it. I'm still like
you're really
I'm away.
The other thing that I think we can touch on now with my next question, but the other way that the VTubing space has also evolved the content creation space is there are now people who professionally rig stuff. There are people who professionally create the models. That's a whole industry and a cottage industry in itself, like in the same way that live stream technicians was a kind of, that's the last 10 years thing. And the new thing is people
live
who
rigging,
rig
like
you do live rigging models.
Imagine that being like, oh, what do you do? Oh, I'm a live rigger. And you'd be like, sorry, what?
Sorry,
Yeah.
I'm a live rigger for this production, because it is a production.
Yeah, tell that to your grandfather. See how
Oh no, you'll be there for weeks. You'll be there for weeks.
Try to explain them that.
Every time I call my grandma, I tell her I do YouTube, I do VTubing, and she's like, "What? Huh?" And I have to re-explain it every single time because it does not stick. But yeah, no, there is a whole like productive side to it. I think honestly, it's a bit of a scam in that the real money is in making the auxiliary stuff and the models. There's so much more money in that than in actually streaming with the model. And there's a lot of people who kind of get lured into the sort of air of professionalism. Back in the day, you could really just get a good model and that would already like set you, you know, ahead of the game. Whereas today, it's very different. It's evolved a lot. And because of just the improvements in technique and technology, and also just the general ease of getting models and the rises in price as well, it's not really like it's incredibly expensive and it's a bit of a gamble to get a model. But on the other side, if you make models, it's great. Business has never been better. There are more people than ever buying models that they really can't afford. And there's a lot of, you know, hype around new features. There's a bit of an arms race going on. Every couple months, some rigger does one or like another new feature. And then they're like, everybody's like, oh, I gotta do that. That has to be in my new model. Recently, it was a lean feature. I don't have it. It's basically a button where you lean forward, like in the Z-axis towards the camera. It was very cool. Like it had one use.
Honestly, that do you know what that reminds me of? And I'm gonna do it because it's what it, and it's gonna, my camera's gonna go blurry, but it reminds me of the here. Like that's the.
I get a button for that. To be fair,
I had a button for that for a while. I used I used the OBS plugin, the Move plugin, to blow my camera up on a key request. Also move my webcam around the screen at one point. Like I don't do that anymore because it was complex. It was like needless. I barely ever used it, but it was like one of those things of I used to have a thing. Like that was a style for a while. So I love that there's like a technical element to that in VTubing. So you said you're working on public V3 now.
I am.
And this is public version 2, background version 4.
I do have some cool features on this one. I have toggles. Toggles are sort of the way that VTubers like do a bunch of extra stuff. So I've got like these arm toggles. I've got holding my little mascot. I've got this one. I've got sort of outfit toggles as well. I have like a little bow, I have a hat, I have a jacket, and I can combine them.
I love that the jacket lapels also match the porcelain pattern.
Yeah.
Do you still have the one where you can hold Saffron as Saffron? Is that still
Saffron is
we should probably
separate model. I can
we get to mention the sock part.
So yeah.
do you want to go from where Saffron came from?
So I was invited to Grandisland 2023, but I couldn't attend because I had school and other commitments. But I made a sock puppet and sent it in my stead. And it went to Poland and it had a great time. And then it went around to like the Paradox offices and now Lathe has it. And it was in customs for a while.
It started as a joke that I made in your stream comment.
It did.
And then it was just like, no, let's actually do this. I was like,
did you have to do that as like a part of a school project? Like did you not have that traveling like?
Oh, okay. So I didn't make a sock puppet, but I did have to make a puppet out of felt at school.
I didn't have to make the puppet, but it was like one that, you know, you took it home for the weekend and you had to take pictures with whatever adventures you got up to with it. And then someone would take it on holiday. It would be like the little mascot of like the classroom or something when you were in primary school or something.
British cultural phenomenon.
Yeah, like
so
this
weird.
is. I'm trying to remember. It's on the tip of my brain.
I know
I
there was a big thing as well
called.
that an advertiser did it, and it was like the PG Tips monkey did that for a while.
Oh, you went traveling all around.
Because they gave away.
Because we took our skiing with us, and I remember like we nearly lost him on a chairlift.
Oh no!
Okay. Yeah, no, you could do it. Okay, that's.
I can't remember what it's called. That's a whole callback.
But then the next evolution of it was for April Fools. I went and I rigged a whole model of it. I rigged a whole Saffron model.
That's so
and
cool.
It's a little bit creepy, but it's kind of beautiful.
It works though.
Yeah, I've done a few of them as commissions as well. But I can load this as a separate model. So hold on, there will be 2 for a second. I save it and I say no.
Multiplying.
And then I can get out.
Vtuber army.
And then I can get. Hold on.
Yeah, we got to find
always
Something just comes this wave of like just.
And then
Wait.
I get out my normal model. It takes forever to load these models. There are too many layers. And then
Well, I mean, it's technically a very.
It's yeah.
demanding.
Demanding
And then
and impressive.
I put this here, I pin it to my model, and then I have the sock.
Oh, that's so
There you
cool.
go.
And then I can just sort of have that there.
I love that we also just got a live demonstration of like actually the technical layers on that. That's so cool.
I want a little live buddy on my shoulder.
Well, this is the thing. I commissioned Saffron to make a
Yeah.
live buddy for me. So something that I've been doing and playing around with is I have ChatGPT and a speech synthesizer tied up to my Twitch bot. So when people put in the commands, it reads them out and stuff in a jaunty British voice. And it's Lord Toastington, which is an icon that I always had done.
Lord Toastington, amazing.
I sent the PSD and the Adobe AI file to Saffron and commissioned her, and she's actually rigged it. I don't know if we can.
I did. I can show it.
Yeah, okay. If you want to show it, go for it.
So I rigged it up as just sort of like a chat buddy.
Yeah, and I'm hopefully gonna tie it so he talks. But look at him, look at his bouncy little self.
That's
There,
incredible.
It's tied to my mouse, so I can move my mouse around.
Oh, amazing.
It does that. The mouth is just on sort of like a breathing cycle, and the eyes are auto blinking, but you can like set that up to basically anything. You can change a lot of the parameters. But yeah, so I just have this like little guy now here.
Have we talked about how like potentially like demanding it is hardware wise? And
No, we
Yeah.
haven't. I think that's a good
Like-
caveat. What?
because
That's
obviously
a
if
good-
you're
yeah.
if you're doing this like while gaming as well, that's in streaming, like running a game and then streaming a game is intense on its own and sometimes causes problems with just, you know, you're killing often some of the game performance. You know, and then if you add a high definition camera, that takes even more resources, and you're adding in something that's got to react live and respond to the rigging software and everything else. So, I mean, how does that all come together? And
So just looking at my task manager right now, as I sort of like move around and do stuff, it is using, what is the percentage? It's saying it's using like 25% of my memory on my computer. And I have 32 gigabytes. So it's using like 8 gigabytes of RAM just for this. And this is not a particularly intensive model either. This is one of the sort of simpler models. And it's using 5% of the CPU and 14% of the GPU. So,
okay, so it's mainly GPU loaded. Yeah, that makes sense for.
Which, if you're mainly a CPU, if you play like Paradox games,
Yeah.
it's very CPU. Or if you
probably-
play,
you're all right, yeah.
all right. But imagine if you're playing something like, for me, it's like because it's CryEngine.
Total Warhammer, I cannot play that with the model on it. Or I couldn't, at least on my old computer. This one maybe, but it's like, yeah, no, you are limited in that you have to play games on lower settings because you need to have the model running. And you can get rid of it. You can put on the, like, you know, reactive PNG every now and then. But it's, you know, it's always sort of better to have the model. So it does limit you in that way. You need a beefy computer to use a VTuber model.
When I get the little pet guy, the little Toastington rigged up, I'll do some tests. And if it's, but I don't think it will be before this podcast goes out, because of, again, going to TwitchCon this weekend. It's on a backburnered list of many things that I need to do. It's one of those things of I will do a test because I've got a very, very beefy rig. But even so, it's beefy, but on the cusp of being quite outdated because I'm still using DDR4 RAM, even though I've got 128 gigabytes of it, and I'm on a 3090 Ti, which
this is the use case for all those gigs of RAM. Surely,
yeah,
if
well,
you've got
exactly. And I've got a
Exactly.
3090 Ti, but also my OBS setup right now is ridiculously complex for certain things, like because I essentially have two versions of OBS open, one that's handling just my camera already, one that's doing thing, and this would essentially be a third case. It's like one of those things of, okay, there's only so much cooling this PC can have before I explode.
I mean, you've already talked about like some of the setup costs of this being obviously it's way higher than just your average creator jumping on and starting streaming, which we've mentioned in podcasts before, sort of how about trying to use what you've got. But obviously with this, it's a lot of it is you can't use what you've got because you won't have got it.
Yeah. The other option is do what I did and make it. You just have to make it sometimes. And, you know, that can be an option for some people. If you have, you know, like I did, several free months with no work, no school, and medical bed rest. But if you, like, you know, live a normal life, if you have a job or school or that kind of thing, it takes a while to get this stuff done. I've been working on my second this new outfit that I'm going to debut eventually for over a year now because I have been just like working on it in the background while I also have my other sort of stuff I need to do, like streaming and school and just eating. That's a big one.
At least you can kind of, I guess, build into the brand that is like, follow me on my journey of like starting from nothing to, pro VTuber almost, of like seeing how the iteration. But even then, is that it could be years of development and squeezing in the time to work on it, even while taking trying to do as much as you can yourself or in-house or whatever, to save costs.
If you have money, if you have like a couple $1,000s to splurge, you can just commission somebody else to do it. But it's like, a lot of people fall into that trap of, they're like, oh, I'll just get a fancy model and then it'll all work out and it'll be profitable.
And then you're streaming to 0 viewers and you're thinking,
with a $7,000 model.
Yeah, it's
starting to sound like my career.
But
except instead of fancy models, it's fancy
I guess
cameras and microphones.
The hardware side, it's almost, well, I guess it's a perfect use case of like probably looking at, ultimately, if you're doing this and you're trying to maximize, so you're playing like the top end games at the maximum settings, everything else, you're not just working with one computer, most likely you're probably looking at dual setups or potentially even triple setups.
Those are pretty common, yeah.
To run everything. In a way, it's kind of a shame that GPU makers have moved away from multi-GPU solutions, because this would be a perfect use case for stuff like SLI or Crossfire that AMD and NVIDIA both used to do, because you could have a dedicated GPU to run the model and you could have a dedicated GPU to run through the streaming software and the game. But obviously the technology's moved away. It's because like GPUs have become more efficient in on themselves. I think probably what we'll start seeing is more of what NVIDIA are doing in their 4090 series, which is having dual encoders. Back in the days of SLI, you choose which GPU you want to load certain things. Now it'll be a case of, right, you've got access to multiple different encoders. Choose which encoder you want to load.
I want a 4090 so badly.
I've got one coming.
Legitimately, just I had a use case last night where I was running the stream for Parabellum and I was like doing dual CPU encoding, but we tried to do local recording and another GPU encoder, and we couldn't local record, so we actually don't have a hard copy of the stream because I ran out of encoders because I was doing too much. I was like, I am the use case, and it's every day it gets close. I get closer to spending a ridiculous amount of money, even though I know that the 50 series cards are kind of on the way as well.
Unless you're being given one for free. Wait,
you got it for free as well?
I did, yes. It's part of a whole new sponsor package for stuff. I can announce it when it's here.
So Saf's got really cool models. You've got really cool computer parts. What am I doing here?
You got your cameras. You got your nice cameras.
Do the camera thing. Do the camera thing again.
You can just see my
Yay.
instead.
Oh, it's blurry now. There we go.
You don't need to see this. You don't need to see. Oh, wrong way.
Oh God, wrong way. Oh, blur out of focus. There we go.
Yeah,
We've broken it.
Yeah.
So you've done a lot, Saffron. You've gone through multiple models. I'm going to divide this into two things because we're really rattling on with this episode. I'm sorry, this is probably going to be a slightly long one because I've got more questions, but also there's another thing that we're still on the VTuber topic, and I want to get onto the fact that you're a YouTube streamer, and mainly a YouTube streamer, because that's also its own sort of content creation genre right now. But
some people might be thinking, sorry, YouTube does live streaming, that video site does stream stuff?
It's also one of those things of your RPM and CPM rates tend to be higher on videos of the same viewership and stuff. So I really want to kind of dive into some of that. But I want to ask you, what part of both the actual creating your models and all the technical stuff that you've learned are you most proud of? And also, what thus far in your career, what's been the standout moment of what are you most proud of there? I
mean, for the models, I've done a lot of really cool stuff, and I have a lot of really cool stuff coming up. I have I can't really say, I can say stuff, but I want to keep it cool and secret. I have a sort of chibi model coming up that I'm not doing the art for, but I've teamed up with someone that I know everybody's going to be very excited for the art from them. So I have that coming up. I have, of course, my new model coming up, which I of course, that's also I'm keeping secret, but I've been spending like so much time on this. Since I got home from my semester at college, I have been doing like 12-hour days just rigging. So I've got a lot of cool stuff coming up. But as for like the content creation side of stuff, I've done a bunch of really cool events. I had, for my 1-year anniversary of streaming in February, I got, I think, like 20 VTubers together to play EU4. And that was really fun because I remember when I started out, the part of the reason I went into this niche was I legitimately Googled EU4 VTuber, and there was like no real results. And now I am the result.
Yeah, your first stream was called VTubers in my EU4. More likely than you think, right?
Yeah. So now if you Google like EU4 VTuber, I think, yeah, I'm the first result. So it's sort of built out of that. And it was like, look, there are a ton of VTubers that play EU4. And this is, where you can find them all. I also am very proud of the girls' night that I did last year. And there may be some work on another one of those in the future. But last year I did a whole thing of women play EU4, where I got 5 other girls and we played EU4 and we talked about what it was like being a woman in this space, which is, very typically considered to be male dominated. That was really fun. That was a really noteworthy stream. I guess other than that, it was so fun. It's been so fun to be on like the competitive shows. I was on the draft, and of course I was on briefly Parabellum.
Yeah, I'm so sorry you didn't make it through the qualifiers.
But those have been so fun. Those have been so incredibly fun. I've had a bunch of really cool moments, like in the draft where I got inherited as Burgundy live. That's a beautiful clip. I love that one.
I will say as well, if anyone is female or female identifying and looking to be in the, I'm going to say the paradox space, because again, it's one of the things, or the strategy space, or a space that is very male dominated, and want to like get a feel for what that's like. The EU4 like girls' night stream that happened is it's a great resource. It's a good resource, and it's just a good listen to like both because you guys were very upfront about what it was like, and it's honestly such a good resource, and I really highly recommend it. We'll put it in the show notes. We'll put a link to it in the show notes. I think that space, the grand strategy space, the strategy space, the heavily perceived heavily male dominated spaces are actually far more diverse and mixed than anyone thinks. And I actually think that a lot of content creators feel far more reflective of that these days than necessarily the audience metrics. But and I love how the stigma and the stereotype of essentially, I mean, this podcast isn't helping because it's being hosted by 2 millennial-ish white men from a Western European country, but it's like the space is diversity.
Yeah, and Paradox has been really supportive of that as well. They've been very helpful and really in a way that I wish a lot more companies were, where they've actively encouraged us and they've tried to support us because they want women to play their games. Yeah, it's very admirable. But yeah, no, it has been sort of interesting space to be in.
2 final VTubery questions. One is, what advice would you give to someone who's looking to become a VTuber? Like, what are the key things they need to keep in mind? I know we've kind of covered quite a lot of it, I think, already, but like, what's your go-to piece of advice?
I would say the number one thing is figure out if you actually like it first. Like, before you spend $1 bajillion on a model, before you get a fancy like debut, before you do all of that, go and try streaming. Like, even just like with nothing on, like no camera, nothing. Just try it out, see if you like it, because it would suck if you bought a fancy model and got everything already and then you were like, I don't really like that. I don't really have the time for this. It's kind of just boring, whatever. It's sort of like you need to know if you actually enjoy streaming first before you go and do all the fancy stuff. The second thing is do it cheaply. Like, get a basic default model. VTube Studio has a couple of models sort of in it that are like defaults. There's a bunch of not free resources necessarily, but like really low cost resources under $100 for very basic models. There's software to make very basic models. Basically try to do that before you start, because you never know what could happen. You could have a meteor hit your house that suddenly makes it so that you cannot stream for 7 months. And you never know if you need that money for something else. So it's just makes sense to sort of be reasonable about not, putting too much on VTubing before starting.
I think that's something we've hailed a lot on just generally about streaming on the podcast is don't go out and buy something right away. Like make do with what you've got. Even if it's a
even
laptop.
more so surely with VTubing because there's just so many additional costs. And
get like a Yeti mic, get like the most basic low cost stuff you can, and then see if you like it.
VTubing, again, we mentioned it already, has significantly grown in the last couple of years. Is there anything that's VTuber specific that you've noticed that you think might make it into like the mainstream content creation sort of ecosystem?
I think the anonymity and the characters sort of aspect of it is going to be a generally adopted thing, or at least it should be. It's just really useful to be able to, even if not behind a VTuber, like to be a faceless streamer in a way that still gives you a face. I would say that that's going to be super important in the coming years, probably, as well as sort of the techniques to manage parasocialism and separating yourself from the character in a healthy way, but also reaping the benefits of having an audience that, cares about you. I think that's going to be made more mainstream for better or for worse. And I also think that a lot of the sort of technical doodads are going to make it more mainstream. I've introduced a lot of people to reactive PNGs because they are super useful in big collabs to just have like a bunch of little PNGs that jump up and down when somebody talks.
Yeah. You had one with Remy, who obviously is a flesh tuber. I call it a flesh tuber. That
flesh
sounds
tuber.
really bad. Yeah,
it's awful.
Skinwalker, Daywalker. I don't know what we're going with.
You're going to have to explain a little bit because, again, like,
so
what?
Remy, Down Under Gaming YouTuber, he did a collab which was him and loads of VTubers, but you all used PNG tubers, and he had a PNG of himself, I think was getting head pats, I think was the PNG. But it's just like, so it was all in line, and you could see everyone's, when they spoke in it, highlighted when it, so it's like, it was still the same.
It's great if you have a bunch of people with similar voices, which, or, you have a bunch of women who nobody can tell apart because that's how the internet is. It's great for that. And it's really great to have like a way of being like, who is this speaking without, doing the fancy subtitles and different colored subtitles and all that. So it's super useful.
Do you think that perhaps kind of like looking to the future and sort of as it becomes more mainstream, do you think it might be a case of or a hope that perhaps like game developers or publishers or just whoever you're engaging with and sharing content of would you hope to, or maybe there's already some instances of some companies trying it out, of providing some assets that could help either create new looks or outfits, or even they would approach, successful VTubers and say, look, we've got this model of one of our characters from the game, or like, on a side character or something like that, or, like the advisor in the game or something like that you could have rigged up. Is that something you think is likely or already happening, or kind of elements of it are already there in some degree?
I mean, it's already happening in some sense. King of the Castle released a bunch of live 2D assets for like the hats and the crowns and stuff that you can just like pin onto your model. And then for, I guess, the more extreme stuff, some companies are hiring VTubers to be their like sort of corporate mascots. Opera GX has their own VTuber named Aura. She had her own thing, and then she got hired as a VTuber basically for this company. Crunchyroll also has Crunchyroll Hime, who's like the character, and she is also a VTuber that like streams every now and then. Sometimes companies for like big sponsorships will sponsor a new outfit specifically for their one thing. I think Diablo did one for a friend of mine, Cleo, where they got her a new one.
The only kind of parallel I can think to that is kind of when companies hire or commission like cosplayers to,
pretty much.
Could you do this outfit and come to this convention like this, or or do a stream,
or when Mandalore send you a helmet,
or when Mandalore send you a helmet. Yes, that was really cool.
I'm not bitter.
Yeah.
I'm not bitter.
You're not bitter at all. No. So it's the 4090 and the helmet. No, sorry.
I mean, it's a great way to do like PR and marketing, because they're basically ready-made actors who can do a whole bunch of parts and who have sort of a lot of the skills are like face acting, for example. like I am moving in a very particular way that I wouldn't move otherwise because I know what sort of my camera picks up. Like the sort of head motions, how I'm like moving around like this.
What's going to get the best result from the model and the rigging and everything else. So you've got to, so on top of playing the game, commentating the game, interacting, you're also thinking, am I moving in the right way? You know, remember when people say, oh, you just play a game for it? Yeah, that's just what I do. That's just what I do, people. Yeah. We do another one or two things on top. You're doing, because you're also checking the rigging's right and everything, all the layers that you've got.
I've got the whole dual screen setup with the OBS and everything. But yeah, so it's really a matter of like, there is a very particular set of skills that come with this that are great for, you know, sponsorships and unique stuff.
And it's such a unique brand selling point as well that I guess if you can if you can break into it and start cultivating an audience, I would imagine that the rewards are probably potentially far more accessible, or even at kind of smaller levels than they are to like a bog standard creator, because there's nothing standard about being a creator. It's all different. But being a traditional creator of like, hi, here's me, that's it basically.
I think as someone who still does Let's Plays, you're allowed to say bog standard creator. I'll
own it. That's Mr. Bog Standard to you, sir.
The one last thing I will say that I think is going to be, you know, should be generally adopted at least, is the ability to set it all down and do something else. Because with VTuber models, the very nice thing is nobody knows what I look like. All they have is my voice, you know, with my microphone and my filters and all my like fancy stuff. Yeah, it's not like a voice changer or anything, but I have, you know, mic filters like everybody else. And so theoretically you could like hear me at a convention or whatever, but there's a decent chance you just hear some random person. So because of that, I can just set this down whenever. You know, I could tomorrow disappear, turn off the camera, and just, you know, never be bothered again. And that's incredibly freeing, because it means if I want to, say, get a job, I want to become a professor, I'm in school for that. If I want to just say, hey, I want to be a professor now, I don't want to be a VTuber anymore, I can just do that. And there's basically nothing that ties me to this other than that I'm currently doing it, and that I've, you know, said like I want to be a professor. So because of that, you know, I have that great deal of freedom. And there's a lot of more niche, specific niches that have this as a more central feature. There's this whole genre of lewd tubers who do a lot of more adult content. And for them, right, like if they were just doing it like normal body cam kind of stuff, they could get in a lot of trouble. They could get fired from like actual jobs. They could get permanently ruined as like normal people just because of the stigmas and all that. But because they're VTubers and because they have this level of abstraction, they can set it all down and just go on with their lives one day. And I think that could be really useful, especially with a lot of, you know, creators retiring.
Culturally, I think, around VTubing, because it comes kind of from slightly the online communities, such as like anime, such a thing. There's obviously Saffron is also a work of art, and art gets put into lewd things a lot.
Yes.
And that's and also in talking about parasocial relationships, it's like I don't know if you've had cases of that, but it's like I know, for example, Cleo for a long time also had an issue where you have to be careful with what's safe for work, what's not safe for work, in terms of people are tagging my brand account in this without a certain hashtag. And it's just one of those things of like, God, can you imagine if as a human creator, I mean, it happens, unfortunately. It still does happen. It's a thing, but it's just like, do you think it's kind of like slightly more prolific that you have examples of it?
Somebody made fun of me yesterday.
Jesus
like literally
Christ.
Yesterday, I did a stream with a friend, and within 40 minutes, there was art of us kissing. Like there was, it's crazy. No, it's very prolific. And, you know, that also gets back to the moderating your community and, you know, getting what you want out of it. Because if you just let it, you know, Lord of the Flies, you're going to get a lot of people making stuff of you that you don't want. So I have been very sort of heavy-handed with that in that,
I think you've got to be. No, you've got to be. Like, I'm someone who's been chronically online a lot of their life. And even so, like today, I'm definitely not as online as some people are. But like, I have no anonymity. Like, I have put a lot of my life online. I've streamed with past partners. Like, I'd streamed while I was at uni. People met all my housemates essentially because, again, I had a camera on. People came into my room. I've had cases where people have propositioned me. I've had people stalk me. I've had all sorts of that kind of thing. I can imagine, like any reaction to things, it is one of those things if you don't really realize it until it happens. So I'm guessing, obviously, the first time someone made of you, it was a shock, and you don't really know what to do.
My mom saw it.
Oh,
my mom saw it on because she follows me on Twitter, and she was like, "Oh," and I was like, "Oh God."
So if you ever watch this, hey, Mama Saffron, I'm sorry.
Hi.
Hello.
She will.
Good. No, we need the views. It's a really good aspect that you have that extra protective layer, is what I will say. I think the fact that you can just, at the end of the day, it is your character. It's not you. It would. And I don't want to dull down what it is because it is still bad. If you don't want it, that's still a breach of trust and privacy and whatever. But it isn't quite as damaging if it was actually you. Which is so good for your future job security.
In a career space where so many struggled to be able to switch off as well, I think having almost, even if it is still like a physical button that turns off a virtual switch, and then you're like, right, that's the rigging gone, and hi, oh look, it's me, yeah, whatever. But obviously, yeah, like being able to actually have a bit more ability to create that separation, I think, is incredibly invaluable when so many creators, no matter what they do across the space, really struggle to be able to switch off.
And especially for female creators, there is so much vile stuff made, like deep fakes of female creators. It's great to not have that, to have that healthy separation where it's not of me, it's of the model.
Definitely, yeah.
Unfortunately, just looking at the timer that we've been recording for, and I know that none of this will get cut, basically, because so much we've talked about so many topics, so it's going to be a long. I'm sorry, Foxy, and Dan, you've got a big episode here, and we're going to have you back on because I'd love to dive on into more of the YouTube streaming and how you're mainly a YouTube streamer. Actually, final quick question: like, what made you go to just YouTube over Twitch?
Oh, that one's really simple. I just don't like Twitch. I just really don't like it. I think it's got a bunch of game elements that I don't like, and I don't know. It's weird. It's purple. I've never really gotten into it.
It's weird. It's purple. That's a great sign off. Barney would be upset calling purple weird. But yeah, thank you so much, Saf, for joining us. This has been a wonderful episode of the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Like we said, we've got to have you back on at some point.
My mind, I can still hear it, like I can feel it, like bouncing around. It's like,
yeah, no, it's one of those things. I'm sure that the post episode discussion will probably continue on for a little while we talk about things. But if you've been watching, if you've been listening, thank you so much for listening. Remember, you can contact the podcast via hello@uploadpodcast.co.uk. Remember to like, rate, and also Lady Saffron. Go follow Lady Saffron. Saf, where can people find you? And do you have anything you want to plug here at the end of the podcast?
Oh, sure. You can find me on YouTube. I think they just changed the way YouTube works, but now I think it's like there's an @ you can go to, but it's like youtube.com/Lady Saffron VT, I think, or no, Lady Saffron VTuber. Never mind. It's @Lady Saffron VTuber. But I'm there on YouTube. I'm on Twitter as well, Lady Saffron VT. Let's see. Stuff coming up. I have a subathon. I'm going to do a subathon in August for my new model. That's going to be coming up soon. And that's going to be very fun. I've got a bunch of cool rewards planned.
Nice. Well, thank you so much for being here. And we will catch you next time we upload. Look for something flexible. Please, by all means, explore your passions. Get into content creation.
The biggest thing is people not starting. Like, start, make the mistakes, fail, pick yourself back up again. reinvent yourself, because you'll learn so much. And I think it takes a lot of kind of self-analytical skill and insight to actually look within yourself and go, you know what, actually, I'm not an in front of the camera person, but I could use my knowledge as part of a team perhaps to support other creators. I know some people that have like become like managers almost for creators, and often when you hear that, you go, there's no value in that, they're just scamming you. It's like people that have learned really insightful stuff. If I could tie up Lath and keep him in a little corner, or Spiff, if I could just have them here, I'd just turn to them before I did any bit, kind of be like, right, come on guys, what are we calling it? What's the thumbnail? What is the SEO going in on here?